5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, we are live. Good morning, everyone. It is such a gift to be here today. It's been a while since I've convened with you all on this medium, and I'm very grateful to be here with a friend, an ally on the path of being human and everything that that implies, Jenée Johnson. And before I read to you a more formal description of who she is and how she shows up in the world, I want to share just a little bit about my personal experience of Jenée and how we came together today. So I actually met Jenée Johnson in a mastermind with a woman named Perry Chase, who is an incredibly powerful woman. And that's one of the key, aspects of what she embodies and invites women into is power. And when I met this woman, Jenée Johnson, to my left or to my right, this embodiment of joy, just this deep, embodied, brilliant light, just openness, and this invitation in her energy that I don't know if I've ever experienced before in this way. And as I got to know her more and allow myself to be enveloped by the love that she carries around with her wherever she goes, and starting to learn more about the work that she did in the world, I was just deeply moved. And a little bit about who Jenée is in the world. So she is the program innovation leader in San Francisco's public health department for mindfulness, trauma, and racial healing. She was a recent speaker at Wisdom 2.0, where she spoke on Sankofa. And I would love for you at some point, Jenée, to speak more to what that is for those who might not know. She was also featured as the cover story in October 2019's issue of Mindful magazine, and is the founder of the Right Within Experience, an experiential mindfulness program that reclaims humanity, joy, and well-being for people of African ancestry. Jenée, hi. Thank you for being here.
Hey. What a joy to be with you, my sister, who is also an illuminator and bright light in this world.
Thank you. We have several things that we intend to speak to in this conversation. One of them wanting to be to learn more about the Right Within experience that you're creating, Jenée. I know you also have another community offering coming up called the Joy Collective, which is related. And this really, this is one of the things that actually inspired me to want to have this conversation with you, Jenée, because everything that's going on in the world with race right now, and to bring joy into this conversation when there's so much pain and shut down in the world. What is this piece about joy that is so essential to be bringing to the conversation right now?
Thank you, Arielle. I want to start answering your question with a quote from Toni Morrison. And the late Toni Morrison, certainly one of my icons and a great ancestor now, said the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, so you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Someone says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of that is necessary. There will always be one more. thing. And as I take in that, one, racism is a distraction, keeps me looking away, turning away from myself, and has me running on this treadmill of proving my worthiness and my worthiness to be counted among the human family. This thing is also a barrier and a distraction and a terrible, terrible poison to joy. Why joy? Because joy is this effervescent, powerful, spiritual energy that is something that will help us, all of us in the human family, navigate chaos. And if we need anything, not only in this day and hour, but just in our lives, is that we need joy. We need joy to bubble up inside of us and spill over. It doesn't keep us from facing the hard challenges or sufferings, but it is right underneath us and beside us and around us to help us move through. And I think that joy is such a powerful life force. And in the sacred text, the Holy Bible, it says that joy is a fruit. It's a fruit of the Spirit. And so that also means that to have joy, you must be present to the divine. And so in my mind, who I am at my core and my essence is joy. When I think about how I showed up in the world as a youngster, I'll tell you a story. My parents took us to church. My dad was in the choir and he had the big black robe and it was flying in the wind and we were late. And so he runs through and gets into the choir stand. But what I did, I ran down the aisle of the church and I went from pew to pew kissing everyone. And people were leaning out of their pews to get kisses from this little 4-year-old girl. And a cousin of mine who is now 90, but when she was 88, she said to me, "Do you remember when you ran up and down the church kissing everyone?" And I said, "You remember that?" And she said, "How could anyone forget?" So that's who I am in my essence, and that's what I recognize is a potent and powerful and important medicine for the time.
I
Joy.
love that. I love that. It makes me think of at the beginning of your Wisdom 2.0 speech, you began with, "I love you. I love you." And she was saying, "I love you" to all the different people in the audience. And it was this feeling of you giving kisses to everyone in the audience and choosing, there's infinite different ways that you could begin that speech. So to begin with that is powerful.
Mhm.
And, as you speak of joy, I feel this important piece to talk about the relationship between joy and grief,
Mhm. Mhm.
because in a lot of the spiritual communities that I can circle around in social media, there's this conversation of, don't spiritual bypass, and this is something that's been coming up for a lot of people racialized as white, as like,
Mhm.
and I know that's
Mhm.
been something that I've been moving
Yes.
through as well in this
Yes.
process of how can I allow myself to feel joy with everything that is going on in the world. Is it right? Am I allowed to feel joy? And as I've felt into the deeper and deeper layers of joy, especially in the face of the atrocity that happens in the world, to me, to feel true deep joy also
Mm.
requires us to be open to like the deep existential heartbreak.
Yes. You know, I'm going to point to the sacred text once again,
Please.
because what it says is that as Jesus Christ was um, in the process of crucifixion, this brutal, terrifying, physical um, terrorism that was upon his body, the sacred text said that he endured for the joy that was set before him. And I always like, yo, blood, what? Joy in that moment. And so not only does joy help us ride through chaos, but joy helps us to sustain in the midst of the deepest grief. And if you go to Black churches, you will see joy, the joy rituals during funerals.
Mhm.
Music, New Orleans, the band is playing, they're walking down the street with the hurt, because it is where in the face of the suffering and the grief, there is also the celebration. It seems like a paradox, but it is one. They are co-companions. They're companions. They're co-sojourners, I'll say, on the road.
You know, I've had some really honest and heartbreaking conversations, you know, over the past 2 weeks, you know, with there's this one Black woman in particular I remember speaking with, and she was, you know, just saying so clearly, it's like, I don't believe there's any hope. And
Mm.
just feeling the contrast of like the just gorgeous being that this woman is, and then feeling how deeply that thing exists. It's like where shame, like this, where's like how deep those roots can go. So how do you meet someone who, you know, might just not even believe that joy is possible? How do you meet someone, invite them into joy, who might even feel angry at your joy? How do you meet someone who's resentful even at the idea of it?
So here's the thing. We are all sovereign and we all get to choose the experience that we want to have. And joy absolutely is an invitation. It's an invitation, but it's an invitation at the behest of the divine. It is not, it gets played out on this plane, but it is connected. When I said joy is it's one of the fruits of the spirit. So the greatest source of resilience, health, wellness, known to the medical and social sciences, it is a strong personal relationship with the divine. And it's a two-way. And because it is supernatural, that's how we get to step into it. It's hard to, what words can I give? There's no, it is this, it's an energetic, and you get invited. That's why in there are so many rituals of remembrance in that joy is connected to, joy is present in that. And you get to feel the spirit of it and move through it. And it is not spiritual bypass, because it is a quality of the divine. And in order for any of us to move through the things that we need to move through right now, white, Black, and everybody else in between, we must occupy the elevated emotions. We must occupy the higher ranges of emotion in order to manifest the lives and the intentions that we have for ourselves and this world.
Gorgeous. Thank you. And as you're speaking, it feels like a good place to tie in the conversation of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, as I educate myself more deeply into not just the intense obvious experiences of trauma, but all the micro locations where trauma can be instilled in the body across race, and the curiosity of the impact of that, of being able to access joy and connection to spirit. And I imagine this perhaps leads into the right within experience. Does that feel relevant?
Yes, yes. So let me say something about trauma. In my work in public health, I am one of the master trainers of our trauma orientation. It's a trauma 101 course that everyone, all 9,000 employees in the Department of Public Health must experience. And so what trauma does is trauma dysregulates our system. Stress and trauma kind of go together. Our perceived resources do not match the threat that we may feel, whether that's real or not. We have a metaphor. We say the rider gets knocked off its horse. In other words, the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex that makes decisions and judgments and has this practical job of getting us through, is hijacked by our primitive sense part of the brain, the amygdala. So we get thrown off. It's almost like we say, you flip your lid. That happens in trauma, and sometimes it can get lodged in the system. We are never meant to just live with trauma. We are meant, it's like something that happened and it didn't totally get move through the system so that it can just move through. What is at the bottom line of trauma healing is connection. The healing balm for trauma is connection. It's the co-regulation that happens when we're able to connect. And sometimes after a trauma, it is hard to connect, but ultimately that is the balm. When someone pulls you close to them and rubs you.
Mm.
And can just even say, you know, Brené Brown has this wonderful line when she talks about empathy.
Mm.
She says, I don't even know what to say, but I'm so glad you told me. So often we think we have to have we don't have, just presence. And so the trauma is real. And I say that we are here to flourish. We are not here to be stuck in the trauma. So part of what it takes is saying what is so, the recognition, and then the resourcing of self and community, and then taking that resourcing and turning it into how we relate to each other. And then also, you know, resistance, agency, voice and choice can also be a healing agent for when you are able to stand up for yourself and say, hey, no, stop. That also is a mechanism for healing.
Mm.
So my approach to trauma is that it is not for us to stay in it, that we are to pursue our healing through connection and sometimes through resistance. And it is through rituals and spiritual practices that we're also able to release and let go of some of that energy, and also any of it that we may have carried over from the generation before us. Because I believe that once the ancestors transitioned from this plane, their vision for us is not for us to take on their pain. Their vision for us is to take the good that they have left us and make something of ourselves, to do what is ours to do, what is mine to do in this part of the timeline, so that I can pass on to my son and the next generations the baton, so that they could do what they're to do. Sufficient unto the day, another line from the sacred text, is the evil thereof. I don't need to import evil and pain from another generation. We got our own. So.
Mm. Yeah, when you talk, there's so much richness there, and when you talk about like the antidote to trauma being connection, what
Yes.
also is essential there is the willingness to be in the body, the willingness
Yes.
to be present in the body. And, a lot of my work is in the realm of sexuality, and the conversation that we're having here around racial trauma. I see so many, like, the correlations of the willingness to, you said one thing in your Wisdom 2.0 talk of the importance of the willingness to be uncomfortable, and that to be uncomfortable does not mean that we are unsafe.
Yes.
And to be able to decouple those.
Yes.
Curious, how is the right within experience related to this conversation? Like, what is it in service to, and what is it offering on a practical
Mhm.
level?
So the right within experience, the name, first of all, is generated from a line in a song written by Lauryn Hill. How you gonna win when you ain't right within?
Started rocking out when that song came on.
So I was going to actually name my coaching business Right Within, and then life changes, and so it's about looking at the inner landscape. And the right within experience is for people of African ancestry to reclaim humanity, joy, and well-being through mindful practices. And it is for we're piloting the work in community organizations on the front lines of community service or social justice missions, such that those people who are committed to the healing and the repair have developed inside of themselves inner calm and strength and resilience to offer up whatever it is, whatever their program mission is, to offer a better gift to the community. So it's kind of a heal the healer approach that, as these organizations become mindful, nest their work in presence, in what mindfulness is about being aware, it's about being present in mind, body, and surroundings, and holding that with an attitude of kindness and curiosity. So there's no judgment, and there's this willingness to look and to be able to be uncomfortable. And so the right within experience is growing. The goal is to also look at the lineage of mindfulness and land that lineage in Africa, because that's where we all started. What got the first human beings were in Africa, and they moved out to populate East and West Asia and develop the cultures of the Nile, the rich culture of the Nile Valley. And when Africans were brought to America through enslavement, they didn't bring books with them, but they embodied. So the mindfulness is an embodied practice. A lot of what was carried forth is embodied, and it's an embodied movement, and it belongs to everybody on the face of the earth. It belongs to all of us. It's not any, different ones of us, codified it, put it together different ways, blah, blah, blah. Even the mindfulness course that I teach currently is very Western, but I infuse it with other things. So what we want with the right within experience is to help people, the individuals in these organizations, to have higher levels of self-awareness and self-care and self-management, empathy, resilience, compassion, able to have better listening skills, able to better resolve conflicts. Because what mindfulness does is it strengthens our emotional intelligence. And then they individually and then together create organizations that are better and stronger and offer better programming and opportunities to the community at large. So that's the goal of the Right Within experience. And I could say, thankfully, we have been funded for 3 years. We're in year 1, which is a curation year. So I'm curating and working with some scholars. And then as we move into year 2, we'll run the pilots, and the pilot organizations will give us feedback, because we're of the mind, nothing about us without us. So they need to tell us, does this work? Is it horrible? What can, and then from there we'll go on to help build mindful champions in organizations, or maybe have another round.
I love this. And, I'm noticing. So for those who are tuning in, thank you for everything that there's some lovely comments going on here. And I want to invite, if anyone has any questions or has a desire for Jenée to speak more specifically onto certain things, I invite you to write them in the comments, and we'll create space at the end, or if it feels relevant to bring it in now, we will. Jenée, one of the things that feels so meaningful, especially now more than ever, is the acknowledgement of the role of spirit in everything that is happening in the world right now. A teacher of mine, Bridgefeld, has recommended to me to read the book Ritual, written by Malidoma Somé-Patrice. Origins from one of the Dagara tribes in Africa, and
Yes.
about the Western world being the machine, and something that has been kind of eradicated its soul and connection to spirit.
Yes.
And in the conversation of spirituality, or at least Western new age spirituality or spirit can often seem that is something outside of the body. It's an idea to be reckoned with. And I'd love to hear that in the I don't know what you would call Sankofa, but it feels like it's connection to spirit in some form. And I'd love to hear what that is. And also, like,
Yes.
how is that related to connection to the body?
Yes. So Sankofa is an Akan phrase out of Ghana. Sankofa means go back and get it. So go back and retrieve what you have left. So the symbol of Sankofa is a bird with like a golden egg in its mouth, but its head is turned. So they went back and retrieved something that was left behind. So the notion of Sankofa is to return to what was dropped, what was left, the richness of what our ancestors gave us that did not get carried forward. Go back and get it so that you can create a beautiful future, present and future. Spirit is everything. Like, it's everything. In the I'm a student of Black psychology, and at the center of that is everything starts with spirit. And my spirit connecting to your, so there's two elements of that: the life force of spirit, and then that connection to the divine, the infinite God, the all one creator. In this work, what we are endeavoring to do is reclamation, Sankofa, go back and get the connection and own it. In my spiritual practice, Christ-centered practice, when in the scriptures it says, you must be born again, that is, you must reclaim, get back spirit, and then use it. There's a power in it. So, a lot of times people, they boo-hoo Christianity. Well, most of the people who boo-hoo it don't even understand it. They ain't open the Bible not one day. They don't even know what it says. So let me just tell you what it says. I don't know anything about it. So I'm going to tell y'all New Age people, stop talking about the scriptures that you don't know about, because you can't know something so deep and sacred if you have not studied by these shallow, superficial experiences we have with organized religion. Let's not, I love your word, uncouple that. The spirit is what gives us life force and what gives us energy, and is what is the connection to the divine. And when this social scientist says that the greatest source of resilience, health, wellness, known to medical and social sciences, is a strong personal relationship with the divine, I was like, whoa. So it's known, but because of the way the Western system has amplified doing versus being, and came to these shores for our indigenous native people, not understanding at all what they were all about, and made it spooky and demonized it and wrong and shut it down. Same thing when Africans were enslaved and brought here, separating people. People couldn't practice their spiritual practice, but a lot of that lived on, and you see it in the Black Christian church today, still today.
Mm.
So spirit, our acknowledgement of ultimately our place in the universal design, that when you have this divine connection, it not only gives you power, like energy to do, but it gives you a certain humility, because you recognize that you are not the be all end all of everything.
Yes.
And that what we have is a stewardship, that life is a gift to steward and to grow and to experience. And that then there is a respectfulness about how we engage with other people and everything around us. And when we are absent that relationship, or when it's in name only, then I think we miss that.
Mm.
And I know that many people could not have gotten through the terrorism that they have experienced in this country without having that refuge of the Lord. So
That's gorgeous, Jenée. And I know that this actually feels like a good place to speak a bit about new models of power. And then at the end, I'd love to create space to let people know more how they can get in touch with you about the Right Within experience, and also about the Joy Collective offering being made available to the community to get a taste of the work. And
yes,
this feels like a resonant place to begin the conversation of new models of power. Uh,
yes,
Especially as it applies to the Black Lives Matter movement. And you spoke the word humility,
mhm,
and I'm very interested in the conversation of power, especially as it plays into how we relate with any other human being, and the underlying or overarching power dynamics that influence how we relate. Uh, my perspective is that the only way we can gain access to true power, which is power through the divine moving through us, is to be in a deep state of humility.
absolutely.
As you were speaking, it was making me think of the book, The Celestine Prophecy.
Mm,
And, I loved the story that it gave, a very succinct story of what happened to humanity. That there was, and I'm not attached to this being right, but more just appreciate the story as an opening to looking at what is happening in the world right now, and what inner perspectives seem like they need to shift in order to create space for a power with model fueled by a power within model. So tell us.
that's gorgeous. Yes, yes, indeed. See, if I can use racism as an example,
Mhm.
and the colonial, the model of white supremacy, where it's a perfect model actually for this.
Mm.
White supremacy is a system. It's inside a system. So people get all, oh, I'm not a racist. Hold up. You're programming, boo. You're programming. It's all racist. We've all been racialized, right? And the programming says that the model and the standard for humanity is whiteness, and everybody else is inferior to that. And because this is the model of domination, power, you know, when we talk about privilege, the sociologist Linsky, who coined that term, he never meant for the term to be used alone. It was power and privilege together. So the domination of power to give privilege is all about a total lack of humility. And then the boot, literally, or the knee on the neck, literally and metaphorically, on others. Well, you should be able to get ahead. I worked hard for what I got. You did work hard for it, but your race was never an obstacle, and it was never a consideration. You had free range. So when we talk about power, it demands that there is no domination. There is no, I'm the standard of it, of what it is to be human. And it requires to clothe, to put on humility, requires that we reprogram. And that's why mindfulness is so, to me, genius, because mindfulness is about neuroplasticity, how the brain, based on what we think, do, and pay attention to with consistency, will form new pathways. So that's what is being required in this time, new pathways. And it means it's going to take some work, because we've been programmed, all of us have been programmed, that the system of domination is how it's supposed to be. It resides in Black bodies as internalized oppression, and we keep trying to run around it and fix it and defer, and it's a distraction, like Toni Morrison says. And for white bodies, it's this arrogance and this sense of being puffed up. And even when a person, but I'm not that. No, but you live in a system that enables that and that unfairly advantages you. So humility, there's a wonderful book, it's called Humility is the New Smart. It's the new smart.
Well, thank you for this conversation. And, to me, bringing it back to this conversation of power being connected with spirit, and our ability to be connected with spirit being implied with our ability to be in connection with humility. To me, when I feel into what it means to acknowledge the racism that lives within me and the way that white supremacy lives within me, one of the most meaningful places that it has shown up for me has been in my willingness to take down the wall of where I have not been willing to feel more deeply than I've ever allowed myself to feel the impact of slavery within my body. And because of being a white person who has not needed to continually experience the present day impact of racism and the impact of slavery in a negative way, that's one of the things that you brought up in your Wisdom 2.0 conversation of, yes, it's been quite comfortable. I haven't had to deal with the negative impacts of slavery, at least on a conscious level. So to me, such a significant part of this is I see white people yelling at other white people and getting angry, and this is like, to me, it feels like this deeper invitation for all of us to feel the impact of the disconnection from our own humanity that is utterly heartbreaking.
Yes.
And to feel the shame and the guilt of that, but to also not hide behind it, because we can get trapped there and then we become unavailable for connection.
Unavailable for connection and unavailable to do what you're supposed to do right now, what you're in this earth to do. You're here to repair the harm and not to perpetuate it. So yes, get in touch with that, feel it, understand it, both cognitively and in the heart, and then do what you're supposed to do. I am part of a group that's 12% of the population. If this is going to change, white people have to get in gear and talk to each other. I'm from Staten Island, New York, and I follow Facebook friends with some people from Staten Island. White people. And on this little thread, it was like, well, I didn't even know that Aunt Jemima was a problem. I thought that was her own business. And well, if racism was so bad, why didn't Obama fix it when he was in office? See, this kind of shallow bullshit, white people need to talk to white people about that, not constantly leaving it to us. So yes, we need you to occupy the fullness of your life force and all your creativity and the fullness of who you are, and make this contribution to humanity. Black people have been the conscience, moral compass for America for a long time. And that's why the right within experience, I am like, I'm done with that. I'm going over here and cultivating joy, because I'm not trying to die sooner than I'm supposed to die because of the unrelenting stress. And so what that means is I've got to nurture and pour into myself something else that will keep me at the higher elevated emotions, which is where manifestation happens.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to go more into inviting people to know more about your work, and the main
Yes.
thing that I want to share um, for white people as a white person going into this work in my own unique ways. The main things that I'm finding that I need to face within myself in order to be available to make reparations and take the weight off of your back and take responsibility for this is my own fears of scarcity, the fear that, like, and this is where it's like, we're spiritual conscious good people, we don't want to believe that these fears exist within us, but they do, because they're collective imprints. These are things that have existed before we were born, and they will be things that we will, just as racism, we will need to continue
Yes.
to dismantle
Yes.
it through our system until the day that we die. It is
Mhm.
simply so. So what I find is, so that I can be a better ally, I must look at any place within me that fears that if others are to have more power, that there is a fear that I will have less power. So
Yes.
looking at this scarcity model, that there is a limited resource of power, when that is not so. That is only so when we are disconnected from spirit, because spirit is infinite.
Infinite, infinite. That's beautiful. I keep feeling this thing, and I need to bring this over here. I keep feeling this. Ugh. I keep feeling this. This is my grandfather, Charles Myers. This was his wife, Augusta. They came from the island of St. Martin. They immigrated. This was my paternal grandmother, Pauline Mays Gaskin. And I kept feeling them. They're like, we want to be a part of this.
Mhm.
um, Understanding what they traversed helps me to know that I can't cry crocodile tears, because they held, they held it up for me. My grandfather was a porter when he came from St. Martin, and he had my mother one child, and he asked her, "Do you want to go to college?" And she's like, "Yeah." She said yes. She kind of mousy, and she wanted to go to Howard, but her mom was sick, so she needed to stay home. My grandfather was a porter. He didn't have money to send her to college, but he was a card shark, and he could play cards. And he worked his job as a porter during the day, and then he played cards at night. And he won a lot. And he would spread the money on the bed and tell her, take what you need to go to school. She didn't have a scholarship, tuition, and books. She went to NYU, class of 1954. I needed to say that these people were committed to their flourishing. My paternal grandmother came to New York with her mother to work as domestics. And what her mother told her is, he won't get 2 for 1, because it was like, well, you and your daughter can work. And she never wanted to return to Charleston, South Carolina, because it was so brutal there. So we've done our part. We've done our part. We're from people who had dignity. And I think that that's something that is not in necessarily the greater white consciousness.
Yeah. Well, and that and again, it leads to the other piece of, we, as you know, this is a humanity thing, and in particular of white people taking the lead on dismantling white supremacy, is that we must learn to decouple the desire to be right with the feelings of safety.
Absolutely. It is going to be uncomfortable. And anytime Black people speak with any kind of passion or elevated frequency, that whole, the click over of I'm in danger. Well, some of that is, what do you call that? That's smoke and mirrors nonsense right there. You're not in danger. There's no knives and guns out here. And I think, as Perry would say, the nervous system is weak. It needs to be strengthened to be able to hold the fullness of the life force. I spoke at Wisdom 2.0. The first time I spoke was in 2019, and this woman came up to me afterwards and said, "Wow, you're a real ball buster." I said, "Excuse me, do you know what a ball buster is?" That's a woman who annihilates men. She just couldn't say, "Wow, that was really powerful," or "Wow, I just enjoyed what you said," or "That moved me." She had to come up with some kind of craziness and craft me into something that just because she couldn't be with the elevation and the vibrancy of my frequency.
Alive is a deeply confronting thing, especially when we are not willing to feel our own aliveness.
Mm,
And to become more and more alive is to hold more and more sensation within our bodies that we have previously allowed ourselves to do. And that is uncomfortable. Expansion, expanding and deepening is uncomfortable. And
yes.
again, I just come back to that piece of, to feel uncomfortable does not mean that we are unsafe. And that decoupling, as we continue to engage in these conversations, is going to be essential.
Yes.
Mm. So Jenée, would you share, let's thank you, first of all. Thank you for
Oh, you're so welcome.
the first layer of so many more conversations and explorations to be had. And as we're wrapping up, would you share who, like, both about who the Right Within experience is for, how people can talk to you about that, and then what the Joy Collective is, because I know it's coming up soon, and just what that is and who might be interested in that and how people can connect with you about that.
Yes. So the Joy Collective is going to be a one occasion event at the end of August, where I actually share with any and everybody. So it's open, it's not just for African Americans, it's for everybody, about what joy is, what I've been exploring and learning about the practice and the cultivation of joy, and how it does help us ride the winds of chaos. And we all need that. And it is a slow ride into the Right Within experience, which is for people of African ancestry, and particularly those who are a part of organizations. And people can get in touch with me by going to my website and just fill out the contact page. And that way, as things come up, I can make sure that they get the information. And we'll be posting something. My little team, I have a little team helping me put together our little page on the Joy Collective. So my website is www.JeneeJohnson.com. JENEE Johnson, JOHNSON.com. And please go there and fill out the contact page so that I can keep you abreast of what is developing. And certainly as it's time for organizations to apply to be a part of the Right Within experience, that will come out also. The program, the Right Within experience, is funded by the Katali Family Foundation. And so the organizations that participate, it's of no charge. The Joy Collective is my offering to the community. Originally, I was setting it up as kind of like my first online course, and it just didn't settle right with me. I felt that what was being asked of me was to step into the arena with great compassion. And compassion asked the question, how can I be of service? And I said, well, how can I be of service is to offer joy, is to invite people into joy, in the frequency of joy, because we all need it. And that as we go off to do our various, into our various lanes and to do our work, to be able to take joy with us. So at the end of August, but please come to this website and sign up at the contact page.
We can pop that below so people have access.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Anything else you'd like to share as this kind of parting words? Anything along those lines?
Well, I just would like to say, celebrate life. Be in the lane of growth and humility. And inside of that lane, gratitude. Because interestingly enough, joy and gratitude actually go together. And I'll talk more about that, in the Joy Collective. But celebration, flourishing, joy, gratitude, humility. It's a wonderful stew.
Yeah, it's a beautiful surrender. That's the thing with all those things, that it requires us to allow energy to move through the body. We
Yes.
can't grasp. It's this beautiful surrender that is like beautiful, deep trust.
Yes.
It's a very courageous act to trust.
Yes. Yes. And to allow yourself to be supported by joy. It's there to support us so that we don't have to drown in sorrow. Suffering is universal. We all experience it, but it doesn't have to drown us.
Well, thank you for walking embodiment of it and proof of it.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Much love to you and to our beautiful listeners today.
Gratitude, Jenée. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.